We're in the middle of the worst housing crisis the nation has ever seen. And this is Australia's Housing Minister, Clare O'Neil.
He doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives.
Now, under Clare's watch, the percentage spent on rent is the highest on record. Under Clare's watch, the proportion of income needed to cover mortgage repayments is also the highest on record. And the time it takes for the average Australian to save for a deposit for a home is also the highest on record. Clare is clearly out to try and challenge Chris Blackout Bowen for the most incompetent member of the Labor government. Yet somehow, with all this disaster around her and this failure after failure after failure, Clare has found time to use taxpayer money to create this TikTok video. Here's just a little clip from it. I'll play the rest at the end.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. And he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror.
Authorised by Clare O'Neil, Australian Labor Party, Oakley.
Now, imagine wanting to try and, this close to an election, to remind voters that the Labor Party is associated with Julia Gillard. You have to question, what competency do these people have? The last thing that you would want to do if you were running Labor's election campaign is to remind voters of the disaster that Julia Gillard was as Prime Minister. And you'd want to disassociate yourself from everything that Julia Gillard does and did. And yet here we have these Labor ministers are all lip-syncing Julia Gillard. Yeah, because voters can still remember Julia Gillard's famous promise, there will be no carbon tax under a government that I lead, which just only reminds voters of Mr Albanese's promise of the $275 off our electricity bills.
Prime Minister, no mention today or tonight, as a matter of fact, about the carbon tax. Have you decided that's going to cost you votes? Is that why it's on the shelf?
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
Our prices by $275 for cheaper electricity.
It will save families $275 on average a year.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
Households will benefit by $275 on average. It will mean cheaper power for homes and businesses. That will reduce power prices by $275.
And Australian taxpayers won't forget that Julia Gillard took tens of millions of dollars off them and gave it to her mate Hillary Clinton over at the Clinton Foundation. So if you're a coalition supporter, you want to play this video over and over again, because the more that voters are reminded of how Julia Gillard and how she's associated with the Labor Party, the less chance that Albanese has of forming a new government. So just when we thought that Chris Bowen had the title wrapped up for the worst minister in this government, out comes Clare O'Neil with this brilliant performance on this TikTok video. Have a look at this and remember, this is what your taxpayers' dollars are going to pay for.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. And the government will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. Not now, not ever. The Leader of the Opposition says that people who hold sexist views and who are misogynists are not appropriate for high office. Well, I hope the Leader of the Opposition has got a piece of paper and he is writing out his resignation. Because if he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives, he needs a mirror.